French ambassador and the French embassy for making this visit possible here and at the Dublin International Book Fair this evening. When Mehdi Nemmouche, a French jihadi, went into the Jewish Museum in Brussels on May 25, 2014, and killed 3 people. The fourth one died of his wounds. I described it as what could be the path to a European 9/11 at that very time. I don't like to use this kind of parallels. I'm a historian. We know that analogy is not history. But at the same time, I was trying to find the word to deliver a wake-up call that unfortunately went on many deaf ears. But already everything was there. The guy was not a homegrown terrorist. He was not a lone wolf. He had been trained and groomed to jihadi terror in Syria. ISIS, or Daesh in its Arab acronym, was pervert enough to use him as one of the prison warden, if you understand what I mean physically speaking and torture speaking, of French hostages in a place I know well, Aleppo, because the last time I was there, I was not aware, fortunately, that I was hiding 400 meters away from the place where my friends and compatriots were jailed by Daesh. So this guy had already quite a record. He used his criminal connection in the now infamous neighborhood of Molenbeek in Brussels to achieve this criminal act. And then he went to France, where he was caught in Marseille with many weapons, including machine guns. But fortunately for everybody, he didn't go suicide, otherwise he would have perpetrated also a massacre in Marseille. So already, we're talking May 2014, everything is there. What changed after that is the dimension, is the number of people involved, is the connection between attacks. And every time the blow is delivered, it's a tragedy, it's a moment of mourning, and then we wake up as though it's a nightmare and the nightmare is over. Well, I will have a positive message in the end, but I must start saying that we are in the middle of the nightmare, and the nightmare is not going to fade away just by closing our eyes and reopening it. And the nightmare is not something that has been growing in our neighborhood, in our societies. So it's very legitimate to have a public debate about the failures of our police system, education system, the flaws in our penitentiary system, but if we had the most perfect system of all in all the fields, you still will have jihadis. So the issue is over there. It's not here. But because the issue is over there, it has to be confronted in a European way. Because for them, Europe is a vast battleground. They don't make distinction of boundaries, of national structure. The only distinction they have is linguistic. Interestingly enough, in Belgium, Flemish-speaking jihadis work with the Dutch ones, not with their fellow Belgium. And when they are in Syria, they are not in the same camps. Camps are organized by language, which is a big difference with Al-Qaeda. Because Al-Qaeda, with all its global propaganda, you came to the Madafa, which means the guest house of the Tunisians, of the Moroccans, of the Algerians. While now you have organized the Russian speakers, and by the way, the number of Russian-speaking jihadis now with ISIS is probably similar, if not higher, than the number of all European jihadis. Maybe that's something Russia should think about at one moment or another, instead of bombing in Syria at this very time the people who are fighting the jihadis. So you had this May 2014, then you had Charlie Hebdo, Hypercacher, and the French policewoman killed from 7th to 9th January 2015. Then you had the Bataclan and Saint-Denis in November. Then you had, on the 22nd of March, an attack that was not on Brussels, it was an attack on Europe. The airport, but the metro station that is the closest one to the European Parliament and the European institution. And it was very clear that it was an attack on Europe in the very jihadi propaganda. But in the meantime, those people have been striking from San Bernardino, California to Jakarta, Indonesia. And you don't have 1 week without a major ISIS terror attacks, the most recent ones having taken place in Baghdad, Iraq, with each time dozens of casualties. So it's a global outfit that is far more dangerous than Al-Qaeda in its heyday. Al-Qaeda on 9/11 was less than 1,000 members and was stuck, literally, in a place, the tribal areas between Pakistan and Afghanistan, that is both a geopolitical dead end and a very shallow symbol. You can say Khorasan, Khorasan, but basically, you know, it doesn't ring a lot of bells in the potential recruits. While today, you have ISIS that is controlling a territory, if you are optimistic, the size of Jordan, if you are pessimistic, the size of the United Kingdom, with probably no figures are fully accurate, 30,000 foreign fighters or something in that dimension, which is very accessible from Europe. You know, I'm 54, I'm not very fit. I was in jihadi land and back in Paris in 36 hours. And I don't have a support network. Otherwise, you can come back even quicker. That and on what is most important and very often understudied, it's Bilad al-Sham. It's a country of Sham. And Sham, which means at the same time Damascus and Syria, so the country of Sham is Syria as a whole, is very heavily charged in Muslim expectation of the Judgment Day. I wrote a book about that, Apocalypse in Islam, in 2008, and it was my most toxic book because it's all toxic. It's all about, you know, massacres, genocide, killing of Jews, Christians, blah, 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 blah. But I had one good news. Al-Qaeda was not apocalyptic. Well, ISIS is. And of course, you know, if you make de-radicalization program, if you want to reform justice, if you want you have a problem in saying, oh, listen, Judgment Day is not going to happen. If somebody believes that Judgment Day is going to happen, you can put him into 100 hours of de-radicalization program to no avail. That's not. We knew that in the Middle Ages in Europe. You know, I just recently We read L'œuvre noire by Marguerite Yourcenar, where you have people going to Münster in 1534 because they believe Judgment Day is tomorrow. How can you fight that? By debunking the prophecies. And the prophecies say they are going to war against us in Bilad al-Sham. And not only they are going to war, but the Rum, and the Rum are the Orthodox, and the Orthodox are the Russians. So thank you, Mr. Putin. You added a new, intensity to prophecies that are already, at the core of the recruiting machine. Because I see